will become a tissue paper. So this is a message. So the upcoming topic for discussion would be enhancing the strategic role of the Office of the Accountant General, integrating academic insights and practical leadership in PFM. We have three speakers for this. We have Professor Thirouven Soubaroyen. We have also Mrs. Mahache, who is the immediate former Accountant General of the Kingdom of Lesotho. So I invite Mr. Thirouven. Before Thirouven come on stage, I would like to give a brief on himself. So in fact, he is an origin from Mauritius. So Mr. Thirouven is a professor of a university in UK, Aston University. He's a great professor in accounting. His research addresses the role of accounting, accountability, governance, and notably in global South context. Some of his recurring topics related to corporate environment, topics related to governance disclosures, social aspects, the corporate governance code. So he is a seasoned professor. He does a lot of lectures, and you'll appreciate his speech. So may I call upon Professor Thirouven Soubaroyen, also known as Thiven, on stage, please. A big hand of applause.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it's a pleasure to have the Chair as the Accountant General from Mauritius, considering that I'm from Mauritius originally. So thank you very much. Thank you very much also to the AAAG for the invitation. I hope I can try to contribute a little bit in terms of my topic, in terms of bringing some discussions. And they're still looking for the clicker, so that's why they're rolling around. So I will try to explain a little bit what am I trying to present today. Thank you. So the topic is about the strategic role of the Accountant General, and in terms of also bringing and one of the main things I want to do is to bring research into the AAAG, working very much with AAAG in terms of research insights. Okay? By research, I mean academic research, whatever has been published, whatever has been studied. Although one thing you're going to find very soon is when it comes to PFM as a research topic, it is researched to a large extent. It is researched also a lot by international agencies, but less so than, let's say, when we study accounting in its general sense. There's far less research on public sector, let's say, compared to private sector, which is a shame, which is a real shame, and that's why there's a lot more work going on here. And when it comes to the OAG, the Office of Accountant General, there is even less when it comes to what is happening and where are we going. So I think I'm hoping to provide some insights today on PFM research more generally. What do we know? Why don't we know enough? And then bring a little bit direction to, obviously, the topic about the strategic role of the OAG office. Now, you will see me playing with my phone because I need to put time. Otherwise, as professors of university, you know we never stop. So I'd like to make sure I'm on time. Well, as best as I can. So what is behind this talk? And one thing that I think unites us beyond PFM is accounting, right? I really, really love accounting in terms of what it does, what it performs, how it comes out to become an institution in terms of running our everyday lives. we talk of governance by the numbers. We talk of governing by the numbers. And most governments, most organizations, most institutions, clearly, without even realizing it, are actually being governed by the numbers. And guess what? Who is behind the numbers? Obviously, is the accountant. And so that remains a very, very central part of the sort of work we do. It doesn't mean that the governance gives you perhaps, or the governing by the numbers gives you the result you want. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will give to the outcomes you're after, but at least it has that power that I want to highlight. Now, this is, as I said, I'm only one of the academics gracefully and invited by the AAAG. This is a team with obviously connected with the AAAG. There's a team on the screen that I'm mentioning here, colleagues from other universities. Philip Lassou, Danson Kimani, Pawan Adhikari, and Philu Terefe. If I just say, first one is from Benin, second one is from Kenya, third one is from Nepal, and third is from Ethiopia. This is very much a team looking at the Global South, from the Global South perspective. Right, so let's move on. So what I'll try to do first, in the short space of time that I've given, is to really give you a straightforward sort of emphasis on what do we know from PFM research more generally, right? For the last 20 years, what's happened, but I'll try to make it as quickly as possible. So really, what is the research insights? What do we know about the OAG itself as an organization? So we take the organization, the office, if you want, not just the function of the person, but also everything that's behind it. Then I want to talk a little bit and recap a little bit about reform frameworks that may be useful to remember. And finally, my reflections from all of this. Okay, we're hoping to write something out of this, by the way, get your feedback and write something much more like a document that would say, what do we mean by the Strategic Office of Accountant General? What do we mean by that? I don't have necessarily, doesn't mean this is the answer today, but I think I will try to provide reflections and the way forward to articulate this. Right. So before, like we all do in academia, you start with definitions. I'm not intending to read all the words that you have on my slides, and I will share the slides very freely afterwards. But really, when it comes to PFM, the different perspectives around what do we mean by PFM in that particular discussion, right? It might be expenditure-led, very often expenditure-led, very often downstream-led, very often upstream-led, or often talking about very specific practices like IPSAS, accrual accounting. So we may talk about PFM, but we may talking about different levels of granularity. It's not always one sort of. Generally, much research around expenditure. Perhaps when it comes to income, resource allocation, it tends to go in another discipline, but that's probably already a weakness. Now, when the topic was proposed to me around the strategic aspect of the OAG, I thought, well, okay, where do we start? Well, we could start by saying, this is from your document, this is from the position paper by the AAAG, published online, about how do they see the OAG of the future alongside, and that's from their document, from your document, what are the PEFA indicators that applies to them? What are the PEFA indicators that apply to them? This is not from me, this is from you, from the AAAG, in terms of where we want to be, what sort of positions do you want to be, you know, you want to be into risk, you want to be into PFM systems governance, you want to be a budget execution partner, how does it tie up with the various PEFA indicators? So my research assistant and I, we went through all the PEFA assessments. We went for all the PEFA assessments of 20 countries, the most recent PEFA assessments, and we looked at every of these indicators and every of these particular general. I don't want to present this as a sort of league table, but it's not a league table, but it's just the general feeling and insights we get from the whole sample, if you want, from the whole set of countries. So we can see very positive things. We can see certain scores achieving very well across the PEFA indication, P14, for example,
reflected in different places, whilst other aspects are highlighted as weaknesses and gaps. So clearly, when we're looking at strategic perspective, we're looking at the indicators that we're trying to improve. These are some of the indicators where you have those plus points, some positive areas, as well as areas that may need, obviously, more work on. I emphasize it is not about one country, it's about the whole set of countries. And I can move on to the next slide, and again, you'll have the same areas where things have been discovered in general, issues with control weaknesses, issues with transparencies, scores that need, obviously, improvement. Within the same PEFA scores, there are certain countries doing very well, and that's where I think the underlying black box that is interesting is what is it that they are doing? What is it that is happening within those particular OAGs that can help us understand and spread out maybe to the wider community? And I think that's the AAAG's core mission in a sense, to bring these insights together. I can continue on this, but this is really just to show you, looking at where we are. This is PEFA scores from 22-25, so fairly recent, and where do we go from there? I will finish with just, so these are just, all the results shows, to me, when you look at all the scores across the 20, we use the 20 membership countries, we could see very good areas as well as areas for improvement. This is just a graph. I'm not going into doing the detail. This is a graph setting out basically where the whole sample of 20 countries is sitting at, where are the indicators, and across this. So you have a range, you have the greens, you have the A's, as well as you have down the range in terms of grading. Okay, I'm going to move on. But this is just to show you a little bit the position I started. This is, by the way, from the Open Budget Survey. So this is another very recent understanding and measurement of public sector budgeting. And then they sort of work out the transparency scale and the public participation scale. And perhaps one thing I want to emphasize here is very much around the public participation, because I will come back later to what I'm referring to. So the public participation. And this refers to all the countries, again, that we've looked within the OAG membership. Right. Enough of tables and numbers. Then we get to words a little bit more. Right. So it is very difficult. It's going to be extremely difficult for me to put the whole research of the last 20, 30 years, the sort of serious investigation into how PFM has developed in the world, as well as the global south, developing countries, Africa in particular. And some areas, when the research starts looking at this about, in the 2000, you could find that certain aspects were discovered very quickly. When attempts were to implement reforms, certain things worked very well, budget execution, if I take the example here, but other aspects were very, very much struggling to progress. We're talking a bit, this slide talks a bit about earlier research. And you can see these things repeated itself. Budgets are made better than they are executed. Practice lags behind the creation or processing of laws. And processes are stronger when concentrated actors are engaged. And I'll come back to later to this idea of concentration, because that's something that is a tension, I think, that's been picked up in the literature. Other pinpointing challenges, you might think you are traveling in time because you'll think that these aspects have been mentioned yesterday. These aspects about improving PFM, how do we improve PFM? What are the challenges? Lack of political will, capacity, overemphasis on inappropriate imported solutions. I think now there's a sense of recognition that, off-the-shelf solutions, off-the-shelf practice may need to look very carefully at how it's going to be implemented on the ground. Okay? We need to look it doesn't mean we reject what is happening from abroad, that's not the idea, but we have to be much more critical about the ability of this to work in the African context, which is why the need to share information and knowledge across OAGs is quite crucial here. And different reforms are applied. And what's basically one of the big questions, and I've seen it yesterday, and I'm very happy to see that, is that people are just obviously moving on from the idea of reforms for the sake of reforms, PFM for the sake of PFM, but rather what are the consequences of it, okay? How does it improve the situation, okay? And therefore, there's a number of things that I will talk about in the next slide. But really, one thing which, by the way, using more recent evidence in the 2017, where you could see, for example, that how did you get the quality of the PFM systems higher is in relation to particular variables. You know, these particular variables will improve your quality of PFM systems. These other variables will not. This study that looks at various PFM reforms across different countries, including African countries, make some very, very interesting points that I thought are still relevant to this day, right? Namely, the empowering role of international models of legislation, right? So in a sense, and this is something I've done work myself talking to various colleagues in Africa within the PFM community, and that laws, they are okay. Laws are getting very good. It's obviously the next stage that is problematic, that next stage that is going to be a little bit more difficult, which is the enforcement and application of those laws in a more standardized way. The divergent nature of central finance agencies. One aspect that this report talks about, this paper talks about, is this notion of either in some countries PFM is deconcentrated, is disaggregated across different offices, including the OAG, and in other countries, these functions are done together, a concentration argument. Now, it's not always the case, but the argument is that a concentrated argument suggests more coordination, more ability to collaborate, more ability to get things done, as opposed to a deconcentration, but that jury is still out in a sense of whether deconcentration or concentration works, okay? And I know in this audience, I know in the various OAGs, some are part of a deconcentrated framework and others are part of a more concentrated framework, okay? Now, the next thing is the relationship between the executive and the legislative and across different levels of government. So how PFM really achieves better outcomes is around how do we connect with the different parts of the executive, legislative, and so on and so forth. And that's a challenge. The political technical interface, I would like to say, I mean, very clearly, all our research, politics is there. Politics is, in a way, the political system is there, is present. It's how to work with it, in a sense. And that is one thing that they highlighted. The demand side for reforms. If you ask any taxpayer, and I'm not saying in Africa, if you ask any taxpayer across the world, what do you think about PFM reforms, they will have very little, if anything, to say about it. And that's basically one of the challenges, isn't it? Because you are saying since yesterday, we want to support the citizen, we want to help the local taxpayer, we want to help the individuals, but I am afraid there's a challenge there that the citizenry in general does not necessarily push perhaps sufficiently for PFM reforms. Some NGOs, some organizations, yes, but not necessarily at the sort of core level. And that's something that perhaps the OAG could do about, and I'll talk about this later on. And finally, there's a range of outcomes and experiences at country level. So when we're trying to measure the effectiveness of a reform, it is very, very difficult to see something in the next 2 years, the next 3 years. It is often over longer term. It is often over longer periods that we see it. And we always have the danger of backsliding. In other words, changes in ideology, changes in ways of thinking means suddenly what you used to have a good budgetary process, suddenly it doesn't anymore. So it's still the danger of not just looking ahead and improving, but also of retaining what we already have achieved. I'm going to move on. This is a report that I did recently with colleagues, some of them I mentioned earlier, where we were more interested in, does it really, from the PEFA point of view, from the PEFA scores point of view, do we see an impact on accountability and transparency? And the result is yes, we do see across the results, across the PEFA assessments, organizations, countries that have adopted, this is a national level assessment, countries that have adopted the PFM and they're improving on the PEFA scores has a positive relationship with accountability. It's a fairly big study. You know that PEFA scores don't happen every year, so we have to do a lot of complicated things to get there, to have enough data to do that. When it comes to other things, however, does Supreme Audit Institution, does parliamentary oversight improve that? We have very mixed results. Okay, so in other words, for some reason, when we improve our PFM, but does the other institutional support improve it, we don't have very significant result here. A recent report from the PEFA, not from me, as well mentions the idea of link between PFM and service delivery outcomes. So in this case, we're looking at the relationship between health outcomes and PFM. And they do find, again, positive relationship. So we need to do more of those studies. We need to understand more the chain, the causal chain between PFM work and delivery. Because the more you're able to make this point, the more you're able to show the value added of PFM as well as the OAG. Right. There are more work that we've done, and I've done a couple of work where I've looked at IPSAS, I've looked at the role of IPSAS and how IPSAS does have an impact on certain indicators. I've also done some work with colleagues on understanding the Francophone public sector environment, because the PFM reforms applied to a public sector environment like the Francophone African countries is quite different. One thing that I've just finished completing, it came out today, yesterday morning, the report on capacity. And I will also highlight that when it comes to my point earlier on. Right, so this is, I'm not going to go into the detail of this. We have a number of recurring challenges, and the research in the last 10 years still say we are progressing, we are improving on PFM, but there are various areas, structurally, technology, and I'm not going to repeat things that I can see have already been highlighted. Clearly everyone eyes are well open around, for example, political challenges, legal challenges, and human capacity challenge. One thing that I want to highlight very much, there is a misunderstanding about the whole idea of capacity, right? Capacity is not training. Capacity is far more than that. Capacity is improving the whole organizational setup. And that's where I think perhaps more thinking and more work on that. And of course, procurement is another big challenge which you are familiar with. In our research also, we found evidence from the time of COVID about the difficulties with procurement. I'm going to move on just to say one more slide on the OAG organization. As I said, as researchers, I look at what my other colleagues have done across the world on public sector. So PFM as a big heading appears a lot. Supreme Audit Institution appear a lot. OAG, not so much, right? Very little. And I think there is a scope here to understand a lot more about the role of the, so there is some papers I've identified. You can see some references here. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is even a project by myself and Philippe Lassou, where we investigated how we found how an OAG, I'm not going to say the name of a country, an OAG adopted its own computerized system, developed its own systems to reduce irregularities and corruption and other practices, and it worked. Right? So in a sense, they demonstrated how when people are given the space, are allowed to participate and have ethical leadership, this organization, this OAG was able to reduce by itself the potential for fraud, the potential for irregularity. So there is clearly some example out there, but very few. I'm going to skip on this because of time, because I know I want to get to a point, but really, I wanted to highlight that when we talk of reform, there are different types of reform, there are different models of reform, and sometimes we may have a single idea of a reform, one way of doing it, or one approach to it. And I'm going to skip on that, but I want to highlight that there are different sort of models behind the idea of reform. and how do you go about in terms of the steps associated to them. For many, many years, for example, development institutions and I would say more generally implementers of reform thought politics wasn't important, social, cultural, environment wasn't important, we're just turning the key and installing a system in a different country. But they have now realized, the last element here, they have realized that things are much more complex than that. I will finish with this quote from an AAAG official from our study in our study of PFM. And I think it was telling in the way that the comment was obviously very carefully put together, very diplomatically put together, that, okay, you want us to become more active, more positioning, but, you know, in the end, there is a political side to look at, okay? So that's the sort of, I think if there was one way I can summarize some of these elements we found is this particular comment. But that brings us, therefore, my reflections. I've got about 4 minutes, so I want to get to my reflections on the strategic OAG. This is not meant to replace whatever thinking is going on within the OAG. It doesn't reflect any decision by the AAAG at all. This is just my thoughts, okay? Firstly, change the OAG institutional mindset. Are we perhaps more of a hindsight organization? Shall we become a foresight organization? How do we move from that level of hindsight? With hindsight, we would have done better, yes. But can we move to the idea of foresight? How do we use the data and availability within the organization to move to foresight? Second, how do we lead on PFM reforms? How, to what extent, which approaches do we select? And that goes back to the slide I've just finished. Third, accountants in private sector often talk about the public interest, isn't it? We're here to protect the public interest. I've not heard much from the side of, but the OAG are here to represent the public interest also, in a different way, but that represents the public interest. So what I was wondering, and that goes back to my earlier point, is where are the citizens, where are the communities, where are the people, beyond the formal relationship with Parliament, beyond the formal, how could we involve citizens and communities understanding the role of the Office of Accountant General? And I think that will make a big difference in terms of reaching out to actually the people representing that public interest. Then I think it is not easy, it's been done in some parts of development, is how to make the link between service delivery outcomes and accounting outcomes. You know? So how do you make the link between what you are doing, what you are delivering versus service delivery and sustainable development goals? Okay, how do we make those links? And finally, invest in institutional capacity. Invest in institutional, organizational, and individual capacity. It's very nice drawing at the top. I'm sorry, maybe it's too small, but I thought it made the point very well from 2011. When people talk of capacity, the person who's saying it is thinking, I want a bigger idea of capacity. But the person listening is thinking training. Oh, we'll give you training, right? And that, I think, is the disconnect between what we mean by improving capacity as a whole. Now, what do I mean by improving capacity, right? What do I improve? So this is a little bit following from that diagram I've put here, right? What do I mean by developing this capacity? And I'm nearly there with my presentation. Strategy formation and politically astute. I played with the word for a long time. How do you become, obviously, a politically astute organization? Because you are working with politicians. There's no running around it. It's how do you develop political acuity and development so that you can become an advisor. So it's very much is an important part of strategy formation. How does the OAG at the top level, the strategic level, is thinking about this? Confidence building, organizationally, I'll stop here. Confidence building, organizational, agile, and ethically focused. I really want to focus on the staff, on the management level, as well as operational staff of your offices, okay? This is a recommendation we had from our report. what I've put there. But how do we make sure that our staff are developed, mentored, incentivized to not just tick the box, do the accounting, but go beyond that? How do we incentivize that? I know it's a very private sector question. You know, do we give bonuses? Do we give incentives? How do we incentivize? But really moving the organization strategically means moving the dial on this. By doing this, you build the confidence, you become a more agile organization, and you're more ethically focused. So therefore, the confidence is there as a whole organization, not just the top management, okay? Stakeholder-oriented, as I said earlier, how do you develop a community engagement strategy? How do you work with your community? Initiate, I don't know if you've heard of this before in the literature, it's well spoken about, a popular reporting project, okay? Of course, you prepare the government, whole of government accounts, okay? But do you prepare another set of accounts which is simplified for the benefit of the citizen? We call them popular accounts, okay? Very popular in some parts of the world. Okay, so how do we make people much more available information, understandable information? And of course, engage with, researchers like me and other in terms of thinking how we might improve on operational aspects and improve on organizational one as well as societal one, okay? So this is what I mean by the sort of thinking behind capacity, right? It's not just a matter of trading, and I will get there. There's a couple of slides afterwards. I'm not going to spend time because these are more what I call the practices that have been talked about already in the literature and by some of your speakers today and yesterday. So I don't intend to go back and talk about them, but these are the things that have been mentioned in many, many other people again, digitalization and so on and so forth, improving this. This is all mentioned in all these works. So I'm not really emphasizing small, discrete areas. I'm thinking much more about the organization as a whole. So my way forward, so I'm going to conclude this to say, I hope this is, I know it's a lot of text, and I did on purpose focused on the key areas that I wanted to do and to look at this idea of a strategic. I just wanted to mention this is part of a collaboration. We've signed an MOU between my university and AAAG on research collaboration. Already starting to do some work, already thankfully, and I thank Bruce and Frederick on this, we're already, for example, one thing that really aspires to me as an academic, I'm from Africa, I want to make sure everyone completes their projects. I want researchers to be much more involved. So I will stop there, mindful of time. Thank you very much for your attention.
So this presentation was an impressive one, a well-researched. Normally professors, doctors of university, they make a lot of research before making any presentation or before making any case, just like a lawyer, to students or even academics. So a big round of applause for Professor Subaroyen. It was a very impressive presentation. So thank you, Professor. And when you meet a professor, you have to respect that professor by giving the title professor or doctor. Otherwise, it will become an offense. So I would request you to resume your seat, and then when we have question and answers, I will call you. So you have seen the analysis of PEFA as well as a number of factors that have been linked in between how the Office of the Accountant General should evolve. And researchers, academics, they normally make a lot of research, theories, and then they come to you. Just like one theory is, all swans are white. But the moment you see one swan, black swan, then the theory goes wrong. So researchers, they do such type of research. And I am impressed also because my thesis is on Ipsos. I can see some of the names, researchers. For my literature review, Pawan Adhikari and also Upadhyaya, so these are great researchers. So now I would call upon Mrs. Mahashe. Let me give a brief of Mrs. Mahashe. So she has been the Accountant General of Lesotho, and now she joined the private sector. She was also the former chairperson of the AAAG, where she had been the president also for the AAAG, which was the former AAAG. In 2021, she was the president, and as from 2023 onward till this year, she has been the chairperson of the AAAG. So she has joined the private sector. Her leadership roles include serving as CEO of the Lesotho Institute of Accountants and lecturing in audit at the Center of Accounting Studies. So welcome Mrs. Mahashe for her speech. A round of applause, please.
The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I am given 3 minutes because of the time, and I just want to keep to that because of the topic that I have been given, that Prof has just talked to. I'm not going to talk to the research, I'm not going to talk to the papers, but I'm going to talk, one, to the reason why we have AAAG. We have AAAG so that it looks at the role and the functionality of the Office of the Accountant General, without which, because of the change that is happening in technology, we will become distinct, and the machine will replace all of us. So the reason why we have AAAG is such that the work of the Accountant General is looked at, is improved, the role is enhanced, and we are informing the future of our countries, of our principals, so that we drive the PFM and the economies of our countries towards the right direction. And I want to talk about a typical day of an Accountant General and say what are the roles that we do quickly. But at the end of the day, we are to give value to the citizen. We are to drive trust to the business community in our countries, to the parliament, which is the oversight. So I will just quickly run on them. We do revenue mobilization, collection, and the safeguards. I don't know how in your countries where you feel the revenue is not fully collected. So we are to make sure that all the revenue is collected. And an example is Ghana. We had that, it's so big. We have the central government, the local government, and the state-owned entities. So we have to assure and attest that whatever is there is what we know as the Accountant General, and we put our head on the block. We have to make sure that the payments are timely and they are accurate. If they are not accurate, the Accountant General is the last man standing and he will go to jail. That is the last, the ultimate, should anything go wrong. We do cash management. They have just looked at the TSA. But in the cash management, an important role is that of forecasting. And we therefore act as prophets of our countries. We are able to tell when there's going to be cash shortage, and we are able to inform when we need loans. We do reporting for our governments, both internal reporting, in-year reporting, and external reporting. But now, we are expected to report in accordance with IPSAS accrual, which we have a map that is showing our coverage as Accountants General of Africa. And now we have to start talking about our impact on the environment, our impact on the society, and also our impact on the governance. At the end of the day, we are also made the stewards of everything. I think also we are to say we are the marketers of our countries, because anybody who wants to invest in our country, including Tony, who was here in the morning, the first magazine he looks at is our consolidated financial statements. So if we are not fully compliant and not selling our countries well, then there becomes an issue. The final one is Auditor General, SAIS, our Supreme Audits. They make recommendations. We want the recommendations to be implemented. But I just want to ask, are we able, as Accountants General, to enforce that our ministries, MDAs, do implement all those? So this is, in a nutshell, our day as we wake up and to the end. We have the accounting cadre, which we are with here. We are responsible to make sure that they have the latest capabilities, skills. We have to make sure that the latest technology we are able to respond to. We have to make sure that the ethics, because for any wrongdoing of an accountant, our principals will ask the Accountant General. So our role of nurturing the talent, we need to instill the trust of the business community. I don't know how many countries here have domestic arrears. I don't know if your business community still trusts you, at least at local in your countries. And then we move to the external, our IMF, and investors from outside. So all these are the roles of the Accountants General. This is a typical PFM cycle. Usually, we are on budget execution, which is a bit yellow, and on accounting and on external audit. And I just want to say, perhaps we have to look at to what extent we are missing on policy and planning, to what extent we are missing on budget preparation and approval, and to what extent can we inform, influence, lobby for the legislative oversight? To what extent do we work with our public accounts committees? When last did your Public Financial Management and Accountability Act get reviewed? Did it cover artificial intelligence? Did it cover all the modern ways of paying? The controlling of the money that Colonel talked about today morning. So what is the pace of our legislative oversight? And I wanted to touch on the myths and misconceptions. We are normally referred to say we are paymasters, we are bookkeepers, we are number crunchers, and finally, accountants, we are known to hinder the process. We are known to be stingy. We are being known to stop a fast money moving. Usually it's corruption money. So we have to demystify these myths that we have by making sure that our principals, the business industry, understand, appreciate by our strong communication and by our strategic financial engagement, but also by working with other professionals, such as the lawyers, such as the law enforcement agency, so that when there is a wrongdoing and we don't have the power to, then we work with the law enforcement agencies. But so I've covered the myths and misconceptions and what actually we do and we are supposed to do. I think we have covered it well from the professor. The biggest slide that I wanted also to cover is the threats and the safeguards. When we encounter these threats, we will encounter them at high pressure at accountants general and at low pressure at accountants level in the line ministries. So I think as AAAG, we need to have a toolkit and a guidance such as the one that the ethics board is providing to say, what then do you do when you face fraud, corruption, IFFs, which is illicit financial flows? We also know that we have political interference. Usually when we are from elections, the political interference is low. But when we are going for elections and it's campaign time, we will have a lot of political interference. We have fast-moving pace of technology. Are we able to catch up with it? Not only us, but are our laws able to catch up with the technology? We need also to work on, do we have enough power for recourse? If there is a wrongdoing by a chief accounting officer or a principal secretary in another ministry, do we have enough power and consequence management that we can do as accountants general when we see that there is a wrongdoing? The other one is capacity constraints, be it money, be it the human resource, be it the machinery. And then the last one is change. I think the other message that we have is there's so much change that if we don't move at the pace of the change, we may become irrelevant. The safeguards that are with or without our control is, we have seen an example with Ghana. The president was here and he was talking Public Financial Management Procurement Act, a consolidation of debt, like he's an accountant. I'm yet to find out if he's. So the tone from the top is quite important. Change management, which has to be driven by us as accountants general. We need to identify AAAG. I saw that API is in the room, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Ghana. ACCA, SIPFA is here. The new skills, the new capacity, and they have to be brought on our desks online electronically. The final one is communication and collaboration. We need to be communicating internally within the ministry, internally within the government, externally with the media, so that even if we don't say anything about transparency, about our financials, about performance of our governments, even just as AAAG, everything, our news, our updates are there, are accessible, and everyone can defend or can say and speak on behalf of us. The final one is to collaborate with the technology ministry and is to collaborate with the tech companies. I think as AAAG we are open and we will be talking to that. The final two areas is, are we as accountants general officers sufficiently positioned and well positioned? So I looked at the positioning of Office of the Accountant General being in the Constitution, and the example that I found was Ghana, and looked at other offices of accountants general that are mentioned in the Public Financial Management and Accountability Act, and the arguments which I have just listed why it's there. But I also looked at other countries. So an example is South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, where the PFMA talks to the role, the function, and the definition of the accountant general. And then I also saw that other countries, there's nothing that is talking to the accountant general. So this means there is nothing strong, recourse, consequence management, implementation that the accountant general can do in the country, because there is no strength from the legal framework that one can do. So we looked at the legal positioning of the office, and I've put the reasons for and against. So I will not go to them. We will share the slides. And then finally, looked at the legal positioning and the physical positioning of the Office of the Accountant General. In this assessment, we are trying to improve efficiency, reach, economic effectiveness of the office to make sure that we reach and we fulfill the mandate. And we looked at the autonomy stance of the Office of the Accountant General. And I will keep on referring to Ghana because it presents sort of the best and the ideal model, whereby the Office of the Accountant General is the Chief Accounting Officer and it's independent, it's out there, and he's able to manage the finances. While others, are not as autonomous, but are departments within their governments. So the issue of the pace, the quick decision making, the agility that Prof has just talked to can go to the extent of the principles above. So because it's not one size fits all, these are some of the tools and the frameworks that AAAG will be providing and guiding so that the member countries, we are able to choose which model we can, like the TSA, there is a centralized, decentralized. So equally, that structure is important that we have. The call for action, I'll skip others. The call for action, which is the final one, and we will just combine it with Prof because they are sort of talking to the same topic. So it's saying AAAG should provide frameworks, toolkits, guidance on improving the functionality on the offices of the Accountants General in comparison of the various models that are present. We will just copy from different countries. The other one is to provide guide on the latest technology. We have already had, when they were referring to the IFMIS from Rwanda, to look at the minimum technologies that should be there in a country for a sufficient service delivery of a citizen. The third one is to partner with experts like Professor PAOs, which is the Institute of Ghana here, but we have them in all our member countries, and work with the API, which is a body for the AAAG, the Auditors General, and the PAOs to professionalize all professionals in the public sector or in the PFM. Finally, is to engage with political principles through the African Union, through the IMF annual meetings and spring meetings, through the African development meetings, through ECOWAS, through our SADC formations, so that every time there is a messaging on the importance of handling the finances of this continent from the office, from the AAAG. In that case, we believe the role of an accountant general will be enhanced, and we will ensure that it is well crafted and it is within the law. I thank you very much. Even if we can forget anything, just remember that the purpose of the AAAG is to put together the voices of accountants generals and accountants in the continent so that we speak in one voice and we move towards one direction. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahashe. Thank you very much. It was an insightful deliberation. This is the word of an ex-AG, from theory to practice, from academic to practitioner. Thank you very much. So I would request you to resume your seat. Question we can answer from your seat as well. So we have seen the theory, we have seen the practice. And from what Mrs. Mahashe has explained, I think it's clear the role of Accountant General is evolving because the environment is dynamic. Long time back, long ago, we have been making payments manually. Now we are talking about digitalization, AI. You can make payment from home, even from other countries. internet banking, which is so easy, use of plastic money. So these are things that we have to bring on board. Thank you very much, the two presenters, speakers. Now I would invite for questions, and we will try to answer your questions as far as possible. Please raise your hands for questions that you have. Please, no question? Not possible. Okay. Okay, do we have any question from the audience? Yeah, one, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Gordon Kandoro from AFROSAI. I enjoyed the two presentations very much. I wish we had all the time, because the real issues that affect the public financial management system have been presented in these two presentations. And I just have the issue of capacity building. In AFROSAI, we are aware of what SADC is doing. There is a Model Public Finance Management Act in place, and maybe a good place as reference material, which we are all looking for. We may be looking for information that has already been generated in place. Number two, I enjoyed the professor's presentation. That research, I'm going to read it in detail. But what's of interest to us as AFROSAI is the whole idea. I saw some of the conclusions, and I noticed that at times it's because there's not enough data about what AAAGs, supreme audit institutions are doing. And as a result, they cannot actually conclude. I take note of the issue of mixed results when it came to supreme audit institutions. My comment and my encouragement is, why don't we collaborate? SAIS, for a start, SAIS and AAAGs. SAIS, which means Auditor Generals and Accountant Generals, and not fight against each other. Because they have got one common outcome which they want to see: improved public sector accountability. That's what they want. Then there is the issue of treasury at the center of it, that can we not work together? Because the PMF is a system with many players. So collaboration and partnership is critical for us to go forward. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will start, and then maybe Marcy and Professor can complement on the answer. So the two roles, when we talk about Accountant General and Auditor General, they are completely different. But there are certain common aspects, like, for example, we talk about IBSAS, about PFM. Regarding capacity building, I understand that this can be done in collaboration. Even in my country, we are trying to collaborate with our Auditor General to have a sort of capacity building for both. Now, since Auditor General should be completely independent, so we cannot involve Auditor General in each and every meeting, discussion on strategic thinking. So that makes us think differently. This is my opinion. And if you can comment on. The role of Accountant General and Auditor General is completely different. This is my message.
Thank you very much. I will just talk to the collaboration. I just want to confirm that the African Association of Accountants General, CEO Fred, the CEO of the AFROSAI, Mei Sinkau, the CEO of the Pan-African Federation of Accountants, Alta Prinsloo, collaborate, work together, and there's quite a lot of activities that you'd see in AAAG that were actually as a result of the collaboration that we have with the SAIs. We are, for example, aware of the model of the PFM, and we engage with AfroSAI. We also engage with the SADCOPEC, and to borrow from that. But if we still go in fragmented, so I think here is an issue of consolidating our views in a move and a drive to go into the modern model of the PFM and have them updated as frequently as possible, perhaps on the regulation side, to cater for the developments that are currently occurring. So I wish to confirm that there is that collaboration between SAIs, Accountants General, and the three organizations have actually formed an initiative which is called African Professionalization Initiative. The shareholders are the three, including Greffieth, which is the SAIs from the French-speaking countries, to make sure that when we talk IPSAS, we are talking from the same hymn book. When we're talking PFM, when you're talking IFMIS, when we talk cybersecurity, the accountants are there, auditors are there, and the professional institutions for capacity building are aware of what we are doing. Thank you very much.
In the interest of time, we have another presentation, so we can take a last question if you have. Otherwise, we move to the next session on strengthening fiduciary, advancing trust, transparency, and accountability in health financing across Africa. So we have one speaker, Alexander Birokarang. So let me just introduce Mr. Alexander. So Mr. Alexander is a head of the growth financial management at the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, where he provides strategic leadership and oversight of the fund's financial operations and fiduciary risk management. With over 18 years of experience spanning multilateral organizations, government institutions, international NGOs, and Big Four firms. He brings extensive expertise in financial management, governance, and health financing. He is strengthened national financial systems, advanced domestic resources mobilization, and supported sustainable company co-financing strategies in numerous countries. So I invite Mr. Alexander, please. The floor is yours.
Yes, I have a slide. Yes, so maybe they can. Yeah, my name is Alexander. I work with the Global Fund. I'm a Ghanaian, so for me, coming to Ghana is homecoming for me. But I'm representing the Global Fund in this conference. The topic that I'm going to speak to has a lot with resilience, and I can already see around this time you still have energy, to listen to the last session. So I will be very, very brief because a lot has already been said. Maybe if they can show the presentation, otherwise I can still go ahead without it. So a little bit about the Global Fund, and I think it's important. The Global Fund, we raise money. Yes, we raise money from countries, and then we allocate the money to fight 3 main diseases: HIV, TB, and malaria. And we also strengthen health systems. We call it Resilient and Sustainable Systems for Health. And that is where the PFM component lies. Just during the past week, the Global Fund, in the margins of the G20 summit in Johannesburg, was able to raise $11.3 billion for the next 3 years of implementation. And it is interesting to note that the US gave us $4.6 billion out of the $11.3 billion. We all know the US has changed their strategy in terms of how they finance multilaterals and international organizations. But this is a vote of confidence in the Global Fund that we can deliver on our promises. We have, since our establishment, saved 70 million lives. This is the equivalent of twice the population of Ghana, plus more. We have put 25.6 million people on treatment so far as HIV is concerned, and this is globally. We have also treated 7.4 million people from TB, and we have distributed 162 million mosquito nets. In fact, we have even helped some countries to move out of malaria completely. Some countries are still under pre-elimination stage. We are a performance-based organization, so many of the things that the professor said resonates with me a lot, and I'm not going to repeat many of them, because one of the things that he said is that when the PFM system is working, it has an impact on the health outcomes, and that is true. I will not go through this, just a few of these pillars. And because I'm coming from an institution that supports health, most of the things that I'm going to say will be health related. So I will not talk about all of them. Maybe the first one, financial integrity. A resilient system must rely on a financial system that has integrity. And what do I mean by that? When we allocate resources, we have to allocate resources in line with the needs of the country, not because a politician or someone has a louder voice in the room. We have seen multiple times that sometimes, depending on who makes a compelling argument in the room, they turn out getting more than the others. And it has also become something like a competition. I got more resources than health, or health got more resources than education. We don't want to see competition in resource allocation, because when we compete, there will be winners and there will be losers. But when we collaborate, we are all winners. I'll give you a very typical example. We have AGYW programs for young girls and women. You find these young girls and women, most of the time, they spend their time in school. So a program like this, where should you place the money? Health or education? If it is about competition, health will say, give me the money. But if it's about programmatic delivery, it is better to place the money within the Ministry of Education, because the young girls spend most of their time there. When we collaborate, we all win. You can site a hospital at a place that is not accessible by road. How can you achieve good health outcomes if the transport ministry does not have sufficient allocation? So we see a whole lot of intersections and interdependencies between ministries, departments, and agencies in terms of collaborating for resource. So I think it's important that when you are in the room for budgetary allocations, it is not about who shouts the most. It is about who is better placed to deliver the resource. Governance. We have many rules, a lot of them, but I want to highlight a few things. The consequences of wrongdoing is lacking in most instances. I know we have many professional associations and organizations here. We all studied ethics. We've heard a lot about trust multiple times in this meeting. I don't know how many times the professional associations have sanctioned their members for unethical behavior. Because when we get to the bottom of each of these issues, sometimes the perpetrators are themselves the ones who are supposed to enforce the rules. It's extremely important. I will not talk about it. A lot has been said about digital transformation, capacity building, the Prof mentioned it, enhancing revenue mobilization. There's one thing I want to highlight here. Still, again, the Global Fund, we are in over 100 countries. When we give money, we expect a co-payment from the government. We call it co-financing. So we expect the government to gradually and incrementally take over the role or the resources that we have been given to the country, because we are not going to be in existence forever. If we were not successful in our replenishment effort in raising 11.3 billion, many countries, including Ghana, will have to cough money from somewhere to be able to treat the people who are on treatment for HIV, malaria, for example, and TB. So there's a co-financing element that countries must incrementally take over some of the things that the Global Fund has been financing. And then I will jump over all that and just concentrate on the community. And I think the Prof also did a fantastic job there, because we are not seeing the accountant generals in that space. The auditors are doing a great job in that space. I know in Ghana, for example, they have the Citizens' Eye, where the citizens come up with what they are seeing in their communities. They share pictures and say a lot and feed into the audit plan of the Auditor General. I don't know the extent to which what you do is fed in by people in the community. I think it's going to be extremely important. I wouldn't go through all of this because I know the Prof just summarized everything and said good PFM affect the outcome of health. If a pregnant woman goes to the hospital and meets a nurse or a birth attendant who has not been paid for the past 6 months, if that pregnant woman happens to be your wife, I'm not sure it will be a good news for you. And yet sometimes the check before you to sign is meant for the salary of that person. I remember my wife giving birth to my first child here in Ghana. She came out of the maternity room, and then after the birth, she told me when she was inside, there was a nurse who was holding a cane. And the nurse said, "You have to do this in the next 5 minutes. Have you seen the other woman lying there? She is also giving birth. If you don't do it fast, I'm going to cane you." And she really meant her word. She did not mean to cane my wife, but she had to attend to so many people within that short time, and she doesn't want my wife to lose the child. My daughter is now 18 years. I know a lot has changed since. But what am I saying here? All I'm saying is that the role you play is equivalent to the role of a doctor. The difference is that the doctor has the patient right before him, but you have a paper. But that paper has a long chain leading to a patient somewhere else. When you delay in signing a document, it's a life lost. When you sign it quickly, it's a life saved. Until we see this connection, we will not see our role. We will just look at it as PFM, we have built the system. And so what? The question is, and so what? Why are we building the system? For whom are we building the system? And when we keep on asking these questions, we will appreciate. I'll give you another example, and I will close very shortly. We had a program in one of the countries. When we give money to countries, it's supposed to be implemented over a 3-year period. If you are not able to implement it in 3 years, we get the money back. In one particular country, the money was not moving. They were not executing their programs, and there were a lot of needs on the ground. When we push, the commissioner of accounts was sitting on a pile of files, all from the Global Fund. The only reason he has held on to it was that he wants to be paid per diem. Per diem. Some of the files before him had been there for more than 6 months. You can imagine the consequences of that and the lives of people behind it. I will just move straight to the final slide. What are the takeaways? If we want to build something that is resilient, we have to be intentional. It cannot be business as usual. And it cannot happen by accident. I have already highlighted collaboration and not competition. We have competed from school all the way up to adulthood. We cannot even form partnership because we always want to win. And the loser will always have to stand small. Collaboration leads to results. We need to drive PFM for ruthless efficiency. Prof mentioned something about activity-based costing. We did a study on time-driven activity-based costing, and Professor Kaplan is the brain behind costing and the activity-based costing. We did a study with him. The Global Fund did a study with him in Zimbabwe on their TB program, and it's published. When you ResearchGate, you see the publication there. The TB program in Zimbabwe had costed their national strategic plan at 90 million. When they did the time-driven activity-based costing, where you follow the patient through the pathway, they realized that their national strategic plan is overcosted by 30 million more. So there were a lot of inefficiencies built in the system. They would have gone to the international community looking for loan or looking for money to finance their costed NSP of 90 million, when in fact, what they needed was just 60 million. I'll give you another example. If you go to the hospital and they give you your bill, it's normally a lump sum, one item like this. When you get your bill from any of the European countries, it is itemized. You see the time of the doctor, you see the time of the nurse, you see the time of the receptionist. It's itemized. It promotes efficiency. You can see exactly how much time the doctor spent on your case. And if the doctor is not using his time efficiently, because many of our doctors do things that nurses can better do, and that means we can price the service cheaper. And if we are developing our PFM systems, we have to take these things into consideration. If you are prioritizing PFM, please don't leave health on the table, because I am representing health, but I've also emphasized the importance of collaboration. And I would just want to leave you with a quotation, that you can make a difference. There are only maybe 22 AGs here. And maybe you will be thinking, what can we do? We are just too few to change the world. There's a saying that if you don't, if you want to know how one can make a difference, just spend one night with one mosquito in a room. You will see a huge difference that one mosquito can make to your life. On that note, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So this was a high-level presentation. This has been presented eloquently. And now we move to question and answers. If you have any question, we do invite you. Please. Roving mic. Yeah, we have one question there. Please.
Thank you very much, and good evening. My name is Sena Dake. From the Institute of Chartered Accountants perspective, I'm the immediate past president. And one of the things that Ghana is doing, which I think other countries can learn from, is our law. In 2020, we revised the Institute of Chartered Accountants law, and have empowered the authority to enforce certain sanctions. So just last week, or just a few days ago, 12 November, we published sanctions, disciplinary sanctions against some of our own members. And that is not limited to our members, because the law gives room for regulation over accountants and non-accountants who are working in the accounting service. So whether you are an accountant, a chartered person or not, once you are working as an accountant, then the very tenets of accountancy, accountability, professionalism is expected. This has been made possible because the law was passed and then we are now enforcing it. This is the beginning, and I'm hoping that it will go a long way. I heard Mrs. Mahase also mention it, and my big brother, Alex, also mentioning it. And thanks to Alex for supporting ICA over the years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just had a question, a very good presentation on health. I just want to have a question about, I won't say which country, but I'll tell you later. A country has been trying to work out the cost of its health services so that they can transfer it to others. So does the Global Fund help that from a sort of funding point of view? Would you head a health department to do the costing of its services?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Maybe, Senya, thanks a lot. We support some of these efforts. So if we have not been engaging with the Accountant Generals a lot, we have been engaging with the Auditor Generals in the past a lot. We have just started our engagement with the Accountant Generals very recently, and our invitation to this conference for me is a very positive step in the right direction. So we'll look at what we can support going forward as part of our resilient and sustainable systems for health. Yeah, in terms of the costing, we do have a repository of data on because most of the budgets that we do, they are input-based. Now, input-based costing, you are pricing the items, but you are not linking them directly to any outcomes. We want to move to a performance-based or some kind of an output-based or resource-based, where you incentivize the resource and you force the system to price an intervention. It has not been easy properly pricing an intervention because the context can be very, very different. But the work that we did in Zimbabwe in particular on time-driven activity-based costing enabled us to cost the treatment of TB patients, so we know exactly how much that cost. But it was a very expensive endeavor, and you cannot replicate that across almost everywhere. Maybe you need to work within some ranges and be able to drive it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Razak. As I think the multilateral space in the case of Ghana has been able to have some trust in the government financial infrastructure. So if maybe you even, or maybe you are already aware, most of the interventions is through the government of Ghana. So funds go through Bank of Ghana and then dispersed to the recipients through the Controller and Accountant General to maybe the MMDAs. My experience with what actually is going on is that, one, this is the best of approaches. However, the challenge that I notice is that, with projects, there is defined timeline of implementation. I do not know what actually happens at the approval and release stage. If it happens, let's say a project is carved out, for example, to start from 2020 and then end in 2023. Of course, there are milestones and timeline for deliverables and implementations. Most often, the release of funds at the donor level comes so late. However, the implementation timeline still remains same. What happens is that you then force the implementation stage to crash implement, and that affects quality of deliverables. So I think maybe that area should be looked at. I don't know what Global Fund is doing, but honestly, if that area should be looked at, it will help so that it improves and sustains the integrity that has been imbibed on the government sector. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very important point. We used to have what we call the round-based financing. The round-based, there was practically no time limit in terms of how you implement the grant. But you would, when you finish implementing your grant, you now have to come and make another compelling case to be able to get your next grant, and that would depend on whether we have money or not. But what we realized was that it was not helping countries to properly plan, because the money, they wanted to plan properly. So we changed to our new funding model where we said 3 years is a reasonable time frame within which a program can be executed. We don't determine what the country should do. The countries tell us what they can reasonably do within the 3-year period. So far as disbursement is concerned, the Global Fund doesn't have any problem at all disbursing funds, and we have never run out of money disbursing funds to the country. I am the head of grant finance. I sign off on many of the disbursement. I can tell you there's no disbursement on my plate as of this morning. I check them almost on a daily basis. So disbursing is not a problem. What we have seen on the ground is that when the budget is being negotiated, in some countries, it's very interesting. You see training, and the professor mentioned that very clearly. And there have been instances where you look at the training of one person and you add them all together. It's like this person, 365 days will be training. So who is going to do the job? So some kind of oversight on how the proposals are developed and how the budget is eventually formulated and submitted to the Global Fund is going to be extremely important. We don't detect. We have also noticed when the country has to make a procurement, that is the weakest part of most countries. It takes them on average 9 months to 2 years to procure one item. Certainly, you will not be able to fully utilize the money. And it saddens my heart that there are so many needs on the ground. And when we struggle to raise the money, sometimes we have to return some of the money. In some countries like Ethiopia, Rwanda, if you return Global Fund money, it's like you have to go and answer questions to the president. So the accountability mechanism also enforces or enhances the ability of the countries to deliver. I agree with you. Sometimes when we are getting to the last year of implementation, people rush and then they don't spend the money appropriately. But the solution is that proper planning right from the beginning will be very helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we allowed only 10 minutes for the question time, so the time is over now. So I will call upon the organizer. Thank you very much.
May I invite AG Cameroon, right? Yes, please come up stage. Prof, we need your attention here, please. Please join us. And you do some presentations for us. They've done quite a yeoman's job. Zimbabwe. Okay, forgive me, right? That's okay, that's okay. Madam Chair, please.
Former chair.
Madam immediate past chair, please join us also.
So I think I can leave the floor. Yes. Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We've made slight changes to the session.
We'll communicate. slides will be shared. Thank you very much. AG Zimbabwe, thank you. Zimbabwe, yeah. I'm grateful. Okay, please let's take this few announcements before we wind up for the day. Slight changes have been made to the program, and we'll share the adjusted or amended program with you virtually. Again, many of us are requesting for the presentations, and Bruce and his team are working hard to make sure that by tomorrow, what we've got collected up to date will be made available to you. Now, if you find any item that does not belong to you, please let us have it so that we can facilitate the process of getting same to the owners. As we speak, we are yet to locate the missing phone. So should you come across it, please kindly let us have it. Thank you very much. Today, the holding room for the AGs is currently locked, so we would use the main exit to join. It's open. Okay, all right, thank you very much. So AGs, you still use your place.
Just says the AGs that their transport will be coming to take them shortly.
Okay.
So they just gather together and they will take it shortly, very soon.
Okay. Okay. So AGs, we please with you so that you can be comfortably seated. Your buses and your vehicles are available to pick you to your, and AGs and invited guests, you're also aware of your engagement for this evening, so please prepare. Tomorrow, at the close of the program, we shall organize a closing dinner for all participants. At the same venue, we had the opening cocktail. If other information comes handy, we'll make them also handy to you. Thank you very much for your perseverance, your resistance. You really endured, and that shows that we can continue to entrust into your hands volumes and magnitudes of public funds. You are capable of managing them. God bless you. May we have a volunteer to say a closing prayer for us? Oh, please don't leave it with me. I mean, yesterday when we left here, somebody, oh yeah, please come, please come, please come. When we left here, somebody said he liked the way I pray, so he has formed a church and has therefore made me a pastor. But I'm still negotiating the purse. So, Madam, you tell us your name, where you're coming from, then you say the wonderful prayer for us, right? Thank you.
Good evening, all. We are praying. Eternal reality, we thank you, O God, for yet another beautiful day. Day 2 of the AAAG Conference. Lord, you have helped us to successfully conclude it again. We do not take you for granted, Lord. We thank you for all that we have done today. We thank you, oh God, for the ones we are to do tomorrow. We pray, oh God, that you take us to our various destinations this evening safely and help us, Lord, to sleep like babies and wake up like giants in the morning to face the activities of tomorrow. We commit every remaining part of these activities to your hands. We pray, Lord, that you come and help us. And at the end of it all, we will say that of a truth, that you have brought us to Ghana to bless us. Thank you, blessed Redeemer, for we pray in no other name, but in the mighty name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Madam, and amen. Thursday, we'll be organizing an Accra tour. We'll take you to the Christian Block Castle. We'll take you to the Asomdwe Park, the Independence Square, and the Freedom Arc, then Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum, and if there's time, we'll go to the Art Center. And so tomorrow we'll give you the modalities for registering. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful sleep, and God bless us with a new day. Amen.